I'd like to call the February 14, 2019 regular board meeting of the North Highlands Recreation Park District to order. Before we continue on the meeting, Larry had communication with legal counsel and staff today, and a couple of us met with him, and there's a couple of items due to legal rulings and pending legal rulings. For myself, on item 10B, I will need to recuse myself, so Pat will take over the meeting while I'm out of the room. And then on item 10D, Zach will need to recuse himself. So do I need to expand on that, Larry?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And then we have Blair here tonight, and he has another meeting he needs to go to tonight. So I'd like to keep item 10A up as the first item. So go ahead and, or Larry, did you want to expand?
Yeah, I'll just,
introduction for
sure.
Blair?
Everyone here probably remembers that Blair Ross from SCI out of Fairfield. Blair created the CFD for Cherry Blossom Park 3 years or so ago. Well, as you know, we've had discussions with the upcoming new development, the Lakes at Antelope, that we will have to, the board has agreed to form a CFD for off-site maintenance improvements that the district will make at some time in the future. But just like the last project, we need to get everything started because, as you remember, it's a little bit of a lengthy process from the beginning to the end. And so by starting now and getting everything in place, as Blair mentioned to me tonight, if anything regarding the development changes down the road, we will have the ability to make adjustments because we've already made some headway into getting this new CFD started. So anyhow, Blair, I'll open it up to you.
Thank you, Larry, and good evening, Chairperson Richards and members of the board. I don't really have a formal presentation. We provided you a proposal for the scope of work and our fees to form the proposed community facilities district for the Lakes at Antelope. The scope of work is essentially, the first task is to work closely with the developer, the district, the county, and identifying the facilities that will need to be maintained by the CFD and estimated costs, what we call the special tax analysis. And then we move on from there and prepare a document you've seen before, a special tax report, which is an all-encompassing document that has the structure of the CFD, the description of the services to be financed by the CFD, how this, all the provisions of that financing district, the map of the district, just sort of an all-encompassing document that can be used internally with the district and within the developer, and sometimes if the county's involved as well, so they can understand what's being formed. And then after that, we can also then go into helping you with the formation proceedings. So we would prepare all of the formation documents, the notices, the ballots, all of the resolutions, and guide you through the process to form the CFD and to call for the election. And if just to refresh your memory, that process was a process where we start out with sending the developer a petition, consent and waiver form to form the CFD. And that developer, because they're conditioned to form this CFD anyway, that's sort of a moot point. But it's also a way to that's allowed in the Mello-Roos Act to allow for a consolidated process down to like 2 meetings. And so once you'll receive that petition and then consider a resolution to initiate the formation of the proceedings. And then we come back another month later, and there's a number of resolutions, if you recall, going from the public hearing, forming the district, calling for the election, and then conveniently you've already received the ballots. And in this case, it'll probably be just 1 ballot, and you'll take that opportunity, and that ballot will, by definition, should be favorable. And then we go through some of the process of recording the boundary maps and the notice to the special tax lien. So there's a lot of work on that back end. But we'll guide you and the developer through that whole process. And I know, Larry and I have been talking about this project. I've been sort of advising him through different steps of the negotiations with Mr. Lucero, and I know that those negotiations probably still aren't finalized yet, and that's okay, because the CFD will be able to be formed to tailor whatever the final negotiations are and tailor them to those unique aspects. So I wouldn't be concerned about having to finish those negotiations before you go forward. And then once we form the CFD as well, we can structure it so that all of the costs associated with the formation can be recovered with the CFD formation proceedings as well. So the goal would be that there's no impact on your general funds.
Larry, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Unlike the last development, Alvera Park, we knew where the park was. We knew where the improvements were going to be made. In this case here, because we're making off-site improvements, the board hasn't taken any formal action yet as to say specifically, we're going to build a park here, we're going to take some of the funds and improve facilities, which is their right to be able to do so. They haven't been able to do that yet through this process. Is that going to hinder us all? And the one caveat to that is also that we're in the process of working with a firm to submit a grant for Prop 68 funding. And part of that is a requirement that and we're going to be talking about that tonight, having 5 public meetings to gather input from the public for that particular site. So while I can't tell you if the board is throwing all their marbles into one site, or will some of those improvements be shared for other recreation facilities throughout the district, does that hinder us through the process at all?
It will certainly be part of the process, but I don't think it shouldn't hinder it. And I'm trying to recall what the timeline was for Mr. Lucero and the project, if they were needing to get tentative map approval very soon, or is that something that could occur? I know it's always a sort of a moving target, and my experience is that you always add 6 months onto the date that they say, because they're always really optimistic. Yeah, I think there should be plenty of time to look at those issues.
Larry, isn't the map already approved?
Mr. Lucero, is the map already approved?
That was approved in 2006.
Yes. That's what I thought. So, yeah, the map's already approved.
Mr. Lucero, yes, we're on.
How are you? Sorry I'm late, there's a little traffic cut there.
A little bit.
You guys did this item fast?
They did that to my benefit in another park district. I'm speaking at another park district across town, and so it's just an effort to be able to be in 2 places in one night. So I appreciate that, and on behalf of the Orangeville Park District as well. We were just talking about, if I may just direct a question, we were just talking about the timing of your project as well. We just in terms of when we would need to form the CFD, when we need to complete the formation of the CFD.
Our river plans and maps are all in. They've been through plan check. we would be in a position to have approvals and be ready to record maps as early as April. So we're at the threshold.
Does anyone have any questions?
So we do have action for the board tonight.
Can I ask a question about the CFD, because I believe you're talking about CFD?
Yes.
Let me speak on the record. Sure. Larry Lucero for Lakes, and I appreciate Larry being here to address the CFD. I know the next item after this on the board is consideration of the ownership status of the open space. So there are some, should the board choose not to be involved in ownership of the open space in the lakes at Antelope per the staff report, then I would ask for the board's consideration that we create a fair mechanism for these future homeowners. So I'm really speaking for the future homeowners in the lakes at Antelope. I don't want them to have to double pay and create an us versus them mentality in perpetuity. So I would ask that they not be paying for open space and park maintenance on par with everyone else in the district, and then also have to pay for maintenance of this open space within our project without getting credit for that against that other obligation. Because they would be then paying for that open space maintenance that would be open to the rest of the residents. So I would just ask that there would be consideration in the calculation for that, to balance that out. And we'd also, this doesn't speak to the CFD there, but we'd also wish to address the development fees aspect, so that was fair.
So Larry, just so you're aware, what Blair was speaking on tonight is just actually getting the board approval to form the CFD so we can start the process.
Good.
Because CFD can change
Sure.
the scope between now and whenever. Tonight is just entering into a contract.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So as part of the request is to enter into a contract with SCI for amount not to exceed $17,200, and we've included some additional funds in there in case we had other requirements of Blair between now and the completion of the CFD.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
So that puts you next meeting.
Okay, item 2, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the January 10th, 2019 minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Chairperson's report? I'm looking forward to that crab feed. So get your crab feed tickets.
See you there.
All right, all
You have a
right.
good family?
Not yet, we're working on it. We're close. I reached out to Mr. Bill, the head coach, and he's gonna find a good family, he normally attends, and we'll go to them. It will go.
I'm just not a crap guy.
That's all
I
right.
think it's for someone to
Yeah, that's wonderful.
spread the love.
Great Valentine's Day it is.
Comments from my fellow board members. Hey, Alan.
So I don't know if any of you actually read the CSDA forum that comes out daily on different topics. I'm pretty sure Larry does because I've seen comments. But a number of weeks ago, there was a number of comments that people were talking about board rotation of positions on the board. And I was reading these, Larry, I'm assuming you saw these, right? Okay. And so I started reading these and realized, we don't have any policy that says that. Somebody can be the chair of the board for 10, 12 years straight, which has happened. And somebody else right now looks like might be a number of years. So I would like to either have the chair assign this to one of the committees, standing committees, or do an ad hoc committee to look into some kind of a policy to rotate board positions. Again, this is not anything on the agenda that we have to vote on, but this is just one, I mean, the chair can appoint or assign to a committee, and I just didn't know if the chair was interested in this.
Yeah, let's look at that.
You may have a committee already in place because you have the Personnel and Policies
Right.
Committee, which,
I understand that, that would be the logical one it would go to. But again, if the chair wanted to do an ad hoc, that's fine.
No, I get it. Personnel and policies, that's fine.
That was something like that.
Yeah. So they need to
So
with Larry, to explore that.
Okay.
so that's
That policy.
Pedro and Alan,
Yeah.
and then, so I probably won't have in the next couple of weeks, since we just changed officers, I think there's not a lot of pressure to have it done immediately.
No.
But let's say that sometime this spring, we'll convene the committee, and so we can review what other districts are
Right.
doing with regards to that. And it is a pretty common process. Some leave it wide open, and many are very specific. Some is strictly a rotation basis, where, in this case, Diane's the chair, and Pat's the vice chair, and then Pat would rotate into chair, and to the chair next year, and Zach would come into Pat's position, and then you elect the third person who becomes part of the
Right.
rotation. So, I mean, that's one way to do it. You don't have to do it that way, but that's one way of doing it.
That'd be a little difficult with our re-elections and everything.
Right, and that does mess things up a little bit, but you just kind of fill in.
Yeah, that's the only downside I was
Yeah.
thinking that.
To believe it or not, Pat, that part was probably pretty common as well when I was on the school board for a number of years. I might be running for election, and I'm due to be the president of the board next. But if I don't get elected, I'm the president of the board, and you just move everybody up one notch.
So my question before we move on, so would you go back and pull all the stuff from the forum, or would you want me to do that? I mean, doesn't matter to me.
Was it a couple weeks ago?
It was a
3
few weeks ago, yeah.
I can go back and pull it. I don't delete them, I have a
I
file in
don't
place
see
in
most
that
of mine either, so.
case, because there's some good stuff in there that
Oh, no,
you
there's-
may not be dealing with it today, but you might down the
Yeah.
road. So I probably have it in the file, I've not deleted it.
Yeah,
so I'll go
if
back
you're
and-
not signed up for that, I mean, it is a little much because you get it daily, but usually there's only a couple questions per day, and sometimes they're like, oh, that's interesting, never thought of that type thing, so.
And some of them pertain, again, because it's for all districts.
Yes,
Special
some are
districts,
water, some are
Fire,
wastewater.
cemetery.
Cemetery,
It's a real nice forum, because generally there's a lot of new people come on board as maybe general managers or administrators, and somebody has frequently people have the answer or answers to their questions, but they're getting a lot of great professional support as well. When they're seeking certain documents or policies, they usually get 3 or 4 people jump in right away, and they're able to provide that. Sometimes they'll tell you to go talk to legal counsel.
yeah.
But anyway, I'll work on this over, shortly here, and get back, and we'll to you soon, and we'll get the committee together, and we'll start that process.
All right, thank you. Alan, you have anything else? My fellow board members have anything? All right. Administrators report. Larry, you have anything you'd like to highlight?
I wanted to point out, to share with the board, I think I've done this before, and I'll pass it down if you have any interest in looking at it. For the last 3 or 4 days, I've been in Southern California attending the PARMA conference, which is the Public Agency Risk Management Association. Very different than any conference I've attended before, because it's on topics that you don't normally see. The total focus point of risk and liability. You'll get some of those at different conferences, but this was the primary focus. I learned a lot. I have to say a lot of the information is kind of dry. I mean, it's not going to a park and recreation conference like a pre-event or a CSDA or a CPRS, where the focal point is the things that you seem to be doing on a regular basis. But I learned a lot. there's so much to learn. They had some really great speakers that were there, and they were very specific about, you know, for instance, if you're in, you know, a district here, you know, what are the high liability areas that you need to focus on, that you need to be aware of? Things such as even abandoned buildings that maybe that you own that you don't maintain, about how you have to look at those facilities different because they might have inherent risks that you know, and I can think of a couple, and I'm sure you guys could too, that, you know, that the risk is fairly great, even though the facility is not being used or it's you know, empty or vacant. But there was a whole host of things from workers' comp issues and how those have changed over the years. And one of the things I'll be coming back to the board next month and addressing a little bit more specifically is some things that I think are that hit right at home in our district that we should be aware of, and things that have changed. For instance, I'll just briefly share one with you. We all are aware of the fires that we've had in our state, not just this year, but over the last several years. Well, we had Capri brought in one of their outside vendors who formulate what those rates are going to be. They're passed on to Capri, who then pass them on to the various districts. And this last year alone, for every $1 that was collected by Capri from their member agencies, and there's 63 of us, $3 were paid out. Over the previous year, it was for every $1, it was nearly $2 that were paid out. That can't continue. You're depleting your reserves, or you're looking at your insurance providers are going to come back to you and say your rates are going up substantially. And we are particularly to property, we are anticipating that our district is going, and all districts are going to be see a significant rate increase for next fiscal year. And there's ways, they talk about ways of how they can reduce that. We can have larger deductibles, which means we're on the hook for the deductible. So, you know, you roll the dice of saying, let's bring our rates, keep our rates controlled. They said the rates were, they're looking at the rates probably going up for property anywhere between 30 to 50%. However, there will be options given to Capri, who will then give them to us, as if we choose to adjust some of our deductibles, they could bring those rates down as low as 7 to 10%. Pretty significant still. But that's the simple fact, is that when you have insurers that are paying out far more than what they're bringing in, that's the net result. But anyway, I got a lot of good information about that, and I'll come back next month and share a little more detail about those things that may be specific to our district. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Larry. Scott, you have anything you'd like to highlight?
One quick thing, it's hard to believe that it's been a full year since we had the ribbon cutting ceremony over at Streetsy Park. It was a beautiful, warm February afternoon, very much different from the weather we've had the last few days. Anyway, I met with Kelly Oates. If you recall, Kelly attended one of our board meetings. She was the playground designer for MRC and works in conjunction with Play Core and Game Time. And Kelly stopped by due to the short turnaround from when the park got completed and the CPRS conference down in Long Beach last year. None of us were able to attend, but Kelly was nice enough to grab this nice little award that we got at the conference last year. And just wanted to share it with you. Larry will pass it down the line, and then we'll find a suitable place in the office and wipe off all the fingerprints, so don't worry about handling it. But it's a very nice plaque, and when I met with Kelly, she did share that CPRS and Game Time are rolling out another funding cycle. So there'll be more opportunities should we choose to move forward and proceed with going for another grant.
Nice work, nice work.
Thank you.
Yes, Al.
Actually, it's a question for Larry, you didn't let me ask.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alan.
So, on the Prop 68, were we supposed to come with which ones of those we can attend? Were we gonna discuss that? I thought I saw an email saying, let us know which ones you guys can attend, because we
Well,
have to have.
From our perspective, then certainly there's the one, I think it's the second one.
Right, it's the.
Yeah, we're gonna form that as a special board meeting, so all 5 of you can attend.
Right.
Well, and when we get to that particular, well, we can discuss it from the perspective of when we talk a little bit more about the Prop 68 and those meetings. For you folks to have a general discussion of selecting what dates, which of you would wish to attend. It's not that not more than 2 of you can attend, but if you do, then we have to handle that meeting very differently. And I think the bonus of having, well, besides not having to form a quorum, if 2 of you are attending each one, then you are certainly very free to express yourself without it being directed as coming from the board. It's coming from you as a citizen of the district. So generally for these kind of meetings, we try to have one where we can form it as a regular board meeting or a special board meeting, and have all of you there. We try to do it the first one, but as you know, we had the schedule change, so we really couldn't do that. But after that, ideally, we would have 2 of you attend the next 4 meetings.
So does everyone know what dates they want now? Because I like to kind of put stuff on my calendar as far in advance.
I thought that's what we were gonna.
Oh, good, okay, so I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no, I
All right,
thought, that email said, okay,
Well, we do have that on the agenda, so it's, to talk about Prop 68, but we haven't got there yet.
Where is it on the agenda?
With the signs, the one with the signs.
6 and 8.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that's administrative report.
Right.
Oh, and administrator.
That's why I went back to you when it was, okay, there we go. I mean, it's not an agenda item to vote on.
So you have that in front of you, if you guys want to go ahead. I think right now, we certainly know that in meeting number 2,
Right, we're all there.
we're going to have you all there, hopefully we'll have all of you there. And then after that, if you guys want to go ahead and talk about which 2 of you would like to attend.
Okay, I'm out of town for meeting 3, so I'll just throw that out there. And I can pretty much do any of the other ones at this point.
I'll be one of them for meeting 3 for sure, and if you're gone,
I'm out on Tuesdays, and then Wednesday, May 8th, I'll be out of
So you
school function.
can't do either of those?
No, not Tuesdays,
Okay.
or
the
Wednesday.
Okay.
I can do the Wednesday.
Yeah, I would actually prefer that Wednesday, May 8th, because I can walk to that school from my house.
I can't do number 5.
I need to sit there and go, which ones we can do.
Yeah, are we all going to 2?
Yeah, why don't we go to meeting number 1?
Yeah, I was gonna say, who can do meeting number 1, or who wants to do meeting number 1?
I can do 1.
Yeah, I can do that also.
So Diane and Zach. And meeting number 2 will be all.
Yeah.
Meeting number 3 is Spinelli.
I can do one of those, so, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm out of town for that one.
Okay, anybody else attend that meeting?
I'll do that one.
Diane? And then meeting number 4, Ridge Point?
I would prefer that as my second.
Was that Pat?
Me and Zach.
I haven't done one yet. I'll do
Oh, you
four.
can't do Wednesday, so yeah, me and Zach can.
I'll do 4, because I haven't done one yet.
Oh, okay.
So Alan, and we need one more for number 4.
I'll do that.
I think Zach said he'd do it.
Yeah.
He wants to walk
He
you.
wants to walk to work, or.
And number 5 is kind of interesting, we say that one because we want the weather to be better, but that would be held on site at Cedar Creek Park. And so that way we would actually be setting tables outside, assuming the weather's good,
Right.
and doing it kind of on site so people can understand what the boundaries of the park look like.
Okay.
So that's why we say that one for last.
Okay. I mean, at this point, I think I can do that one too, so.
Yeah, I don't think I can. Try that.
I mean, no one can, I can.
Well, Pedro doesn't have any right now.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, and
Or
he's
something
just
like
stuck
that.
around. He's got life.
No, that Tuesday kind of killed me. I got things going on too.
Well, what we tried to do is we tried to mix the days up a little bit. We also had, we were confined to what was available at the schools or at the sites. So what I have is, for meeting number 1, Diane and Zach. Meeting number 2, all. Meeting number 3, Pat and Diane. Number 4, Alan and Zach. And number 5, Alan and Pedro. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
All right.
And if that changes, let us know, and we'll try to contact the other board members if we can find someone else.
So since we're talking about the future park, is Center Unified been notified that their trailers may have to move?
I wouldn't say, we wouldn't want to have that conversation yet, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason is, as I kind of alluded to when Blair was here, obviously the process with Blair was so we get the contract in place so we can begin developing the CFD. But we have a couple interesting tracks that are happening as well. One is, we have a future development with the Lakeside Antelope that will be bringing some revenue into the district, and that has to be used for off-site improvements. We're also seeking a state Proposition 68 grant that is specific to Sierra Creek Park. And how those track, my guess is likely the state grant would probably come first, because just the way the schedule is laid out, I would think that would be, because we have to make our application by August, I believe, and then I believe that within 60 days, they have to get back to the applicants to find out who they're, and what they're gonna fund. So I'm looking kind of in the fall of next year, we'll have a better idea. But what we want to do is, we don't exactly know what we want to do for Sierra Creek Park. So we're using these public meetings to gather input.
Correct.
We don't know if whatever the eventual park design, what would impact with the property that we currently lease to Center Unified so they can place their portables on. Take a step back and think about it, there might be some bargaining chips here with that as well. Because one of the things that is a challenge for that particular site, as you know, is parking.
Yes.
So being able to provide some limited parking on site, but by also working out some agreement with Center Unified to allow us to utilize their school parking when school's not in session, or who knows, maybe, I haven't gone over there, I don't know if there's room to expand their parking, but being able to say that, and I'm just making this up as we go. It could be that the board comes back and in exchange for their use of parking for our park, maybe we change the contract for the use of the portables, so there's no charge to the school district.
Right.
Again, those are things that we won't know until, we don't know if this is gonna be an active park where we're gonna have playgrounds.
Right.
You could come back and say, we wanna put a swimming pool right there. That's, we don't know what the options are yet. It could be a kind of more of a rural type of park with park horses and an active type of park that isn't playground oriented. We have, that's the stuff we hope to get from these public meetings. So that's why we've already talked about that lease. But I think it's far too early to, I don't want to enter anything to them yet. Until we have an idea what might happen. Then we can see, well, how does that work for us? What's the benefit and advantage for us? And again, making sure there's a benefit and advantage for the school district.
So if I recall, there are plans drawn up for Sierra Creek years and years and years ago that somewhere in our office. Do we know about those?
I've not seen those. My understanding is that it never got that far.
Okay, because
That's what
Kay and I had a conversation, and she said that there were preliminary plans drawn up.
There could have been, if the district had gone through some sort of public vetting process, there could have been, ideally, this is what we would like to see.
Sure.
Without any,
Yeah, I don't know if there's any public hearings or anything like that.
yeah.
I mean, that,
It
I've been around a long time, not quite that long.
Yeah, and having that been so long ago, and probably the neighborhood and the community's changed. And again, we certainly want to draw people, that's why you notice these are in different locations. We want to try to draw, and that's a requirement of the grant, is try to draw public participation throughout the district boundaries, not specific just to that site. Otherwise, we wouldn't need 5 meetings. As we go down that process, we'll certainly look at that. But when we have our, and that's the nice thing is that we're going to have, Doug Houston's going to attend the first 2 meetings. And the idea is that he's going to kind of take the lead and show how this thing is supposed to work, and then we'll carry through on the last 3 meetings. But the idea behind it is it's a blank slate, and I think that's the way we should look at it. It's a blank slate, and tell us what you're interested in. Because as you know, as you go through this process, as you get towards the end and you have all this volume of ideas, and I think I've shared this with the staff before, when I was in Benicia. Benicia has a lot of rolling hills between Fairfield and Benicia. And we went through this where we were developing basically it was a community park. And we were getting, I mean, the first couple meetings, it was the idea, we should have a gun range. We should have, cover the mountains with plastic and invite the US ski team to come and have a summer place to practice skiing down the mountain. Well, you're gonna get that. You're gonna get a lot of stuff like that. You're gonna get some stuff that maybe you never thought of before, and you would never think of before in the future either. But that's the whole idea, and then I'm sure the process will be at some point when we have this volume of information, we're gonna have a way of winnowing it down to what are the top 20 things or 15 things.
I'm just hoping we get participation, because.
I do too.
We don't.
There's not, the grant doesn't require that you have a set number of participants. In fact, Doug said, hey, it's very common that sometimes there's more staff there than you have participants. But that's why we've gone to the kind of the extra effort to do things, as you know, spending a little money and putting a big 4x8 sign that's going to catch I don't know how many thousands of cars every day. And while you can't put all the information on it, it does tell you how to get the information. Usually the usual other ways of getting the word out through our website and Facebook and those types of things. And putting it, it's going to be in our next activity guide. And you know, every aspect, every type of way of getting it we're going to do. We really want to draw the public in. For instance, when we get close to doing that at the schools, we're going to send home flyers at those schools as well, you know, just before, so it's fresh and it's new. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to see 50, 75 people at every meeting. I know that's not realistic sometimes, and maybe, you know, 10, 15 would be ideal. But we want to do everything we can, because this is the time where they get a chance to say, this is what I'm interested in. It's just as in the beginning of the process, I think that's kind of the fun part, because you really get to hear some really interesting things. And some of it's, you know, the whole standard of we just want playgrounds, and we want, you know, maybe we want a splash pad. But we have restrictions with the site, but we'll note the restrictions. We don't really have to point it out that it's off of a busy road. But what can we do? And tell us, well, you know, at some point in time, the things that make sense will make sense, and the things that don't will drop off the board. But anyway, I'm a little bit long answer to your question.
I'm just hoping our sign doesn't cause any accidents, people trying to read it.
Well, and believe it or not, it's interesting you say that, because we talked about that. That's why the original, I gave staff, 3, 4 versions of the sign. One loaded with information, which I said, that's not gonna work, because if they have to slow down on the sign, boom, yeah. And so we narrowed it down, we kept on toying around with it until we got to, what future home,
Right.
we like public, you know, participation, contact this type of information to get more information. And we'll find, you know, I don't know how we'll measure, but, you know, maybe part of the survey when we have these public meetings, we'll find out, you hear about this.
Terry will be there taking notes, and we trust her, so.
Well, that's good, being all 5.
Yeah, she doesn't get an option to speak to. Actually, what you'll find out is there's going to be very little note taking from Terry. It's basically going to, you know, one, I'd like to record all meetings, but also you're going to find out that through the use of the whether it's a butcher board, and let people write things all that they want on it, to putting stars next to the ones they like. That stuff stays with you, so we'll be always able to refer back to what happened. So. It's going to be exciting times for the next 3 or 4 months.
Does anyone else have any questions of Larry or
No, we want to hear Mark.
Scott? Okay, Mark, you're up.
Okay, a couple things. So first, the update, the recreation guide. The recreation guide is to be placed in the mail tomorrow. I know in my report it says it was supposed to go out yesterday, but there was a slight delay, so it'll be out. You guys should be receiving it over the weekend. Hopefully you guys get it on Saturday. I know you say you never get it. I did talk to him today and say, make sure it's the safer. So hopefully
I don't
you
think
get
our
it.
chair gets it either.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So hopefully you guys do get it, 'cause that was a request. Excuse me. So, and then this another update. As you'll notice, vending machines were installed here in the Chicago Wi-Fi Coca-Cola machine, and also one over at K Park today. It's going to help us put money back into the youth scholarship fund. So the district will receive 40% of all the profits that is made from both those vending machines. We haven't had any profits going into the youth scholarship fund for probably over 2 years now. So this will help out a lot as it was slowly draining. We found another revenue source, and will be paid out every quarter. So we'll continue to see it coming. And then the last update, some sad news. A gentleman who worked for us for 10 years, Mr. Ulrich Belair, he was our gym supervisor for 10 years, I guess, for Youth Festival. He passed away. We learned in November. I guess he died from cancer back in Georgia. But I know a lot of people were very familiar with the gentleman. He was very popular in the area. He was very much a face of our organization for youth basketball, and quite an ambassador for us. So I want to make you guys aware that he did pass in November, and we've let everybody else know. We're dedicated this winter youth basketball season to Mr. Bell.
Yeah, I hate to ask this question. You said we get 40% of the profit from it. What if the vending machines get vandalized? Who's on the hook for that?
They are.
Okay, fine.
We're working through a different group. So we might have Coca-Cola machines, but our contract is not through Coca-Cola. We're working through a middleman called the Vending Group, and they're located out of Georgia. But they're full responsibility for all the machine runs.
All right, anyone have any questions, Mark? All right, thank you, Mark.
Well,
And Terry, I didn't want to exclude. Okay, comments and reports from citizens and organizations. We don't have anybody tonight. Item 9, unfinished business. We don't have any. So 10B, the Lakeside Animal Development and Open Space Maintenance Recommendation. I got to recuse myself.
Thanks.
So before you got here, we had a conversation. There's legal reasons why we have a couple items tonight where a board member has to recuse themselves from the. Okay. Just want to give you a heads up. You missed that part.
Okay.
So Pat, if I can just brief the board, as you remember last month, Larry Lucero made a presentation to the board regarding his project. And through that process, I advised the board that I would be returning the following month with a staff recommendation. Specifically, I think the two key areas are ownership of the open space and maintenance of the open space. And if I say it incorrectly, Larry, please correct me, but an option would be for the district to receive ownership from the developer for the 21 acres, but it would then require the district to maintain that, with the possibility of an HOA and a CFD, or an HOA and a CFD. They could be separate, combined together, and that I would come back to you with a recommendation. Since that meeting, and I know that some members of the board, as well as staff, have been out to the site and walked a lot of the site, and got a chance to see what's out there. And it's very interesting. I had not been out there until I've seen it from distances, but out there, it's a whole different perspective when you're out there. It's very.
It's a jewel.
It is different, yeah. I mean, it's got ponds with water. I hear the bullfrogs in there, and I think those are the old ponds from the golf course. But when I came back and I went back and I looked at all the discussions and the written materials that we have received and developed part of them ourselves, one of the things that concerned me was the fact that having had a little bit of experience working with open space, acquiring open space, maintaining open space, and that there's always this possibility that you may find out that some things may occur. They may discover a salamander or a fairy shrimp or things that you may not be aware of right now till you get deep into the process. And having gone through a tremendous amount of mitigation issues, particularly with Fish and Game and other state agencies, even for a larger agency than us, it can be a little overwhelming at times. Like Larry said, it is a jewel out there. Where are you going to find 21 acres of open space in our community? But I don't think that's necessarily the issue as I perceive it. I think the issue was you're expecting for me a recommendation, and that recommendation has to be based on certain criteria, and that is, one thing is keep the district, minimize the risk and the liability to the district. That's first and foremost. And when I looked at that, and Larry had made a comment to the board at the previous meeting that if the board chose not to go in the direction of accepting ownership and maintenance, that he had an option that he would look to pursue. So when I look at that, where do I want to transfer the these responsibilities? Do I want to take them on? And understanding that I think Larry may have something to say to this as well, but right now the conditions of approval say that, they don't say that who's the responsible party for owning it and maintaining it. It just says that it will be open to the public under certain conditions, dusk to dawn, that sort of thing. So having given a lot of thought, I just thought that our district is so small, our resources are so limited, that when you look to me for advice, I'm going to try to give you the best I can. And in this case here, I don't want to put the district at any sort of risk of getting into something that's over our heads a little bit, or requires more time and effort than we can give, but it deserves and it has to have. So having said that, my recommendation to the board, as you can tell from my staff report, was not to accept the ownership, which would mean we would not accept the maintenance of it either. And at the time, going back and looking at the conditions of approval, I think it was condition 58 that said that the layout that would be available to the public. And this morning, Larry and I had a brief conversation, and unfortunately, he didn't get staff report this morning. They were doing things to my computer, and it didn't get sent out on Friday, and I apologize for that. But anyhow, the idea was that that he may have some discussion with the board as to where we go from here, if that's the board's decision. But unless you want me to add more to it, I mean, there's no more specifics to that other than the fact is it's a beautiful piece of land. I think it's going to really benefit North Highlands. The conditions of approval do state it's open to the public at this time. Personally, and I think that you might agree that we might want to have someone else take that risk and liability rather than put it on the district, and hoping that the public will still reap the benefit of that open space. So there.
I mean,
I don't know if you want
Yeah,
to.
you might have Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
Larry, why don't you,
I would appreciate, do I need to stand or I just sit
You can
here?
sit.
Oh, perfect.
There's no microphone there.
Larry, while I appreciate, Larry's position, and I understand from a management perspective, that, what your goals are and reducing insurance risk. What I would like to ask this board to do is to really consider what your function is as a board. Why are you here? And I want to speak for the 1,000 residents that are going to live there. And I pride myself in my career of trying to create communities where everyone's interests are aligned. I hate to see the creation of situations where I can tell you going in, this is going to be in perpetuity, us versus them. If the homeowners association owns that property and it has to be open to the public, that homeowners association is going to not be welcoming to the general public on that property. They're going to be obligated to have it open, and they're not going to be welcoming. I just think it's a misalignment of visions for what you should be doing as a park and recreation district. Your master plan, which includes goals for this board, and this is why you're here, with regard to open space. Here's your goal. And if you've adopted this goal, you should abide by it. Here it is, I'll read it to you. The district should incorporate natural and open space areas that are set aside for drainageways, detention basins, creeks, wetlands, and open space preserves as part of the district park system. That's your stated goal. I'm just here to ask you to function under the goals you've set for this district, and to consider the 1,000 residents that are going to live there and how they're going to feel about this in perpetuity. I'm going to be gone. I can make this work under a homeowners association. It's just not the best long-term solution. I know it in my heart, in my gut, and in my experience. I can tell you it's not the best way to do this. We are open to discussing. I would like to see a tot lot there, or a dog park, something that would benefit the district at large. I'm happy to discuss some facilities that would be beneficial overall. We could try to include some funding to build those things in the CFD that could have some capital improvements in addition to the maintenance costs. Happy to discuss whether the district maintains this area with its own staff or whether it contracts with the HOA to have the HOA do the actual maintenance so you don't have to burden your staff. The one hurdle, I don't know how it will resolve itself, is the insurance requirement, where this HOA has to insure a facility that's open to the general public. It is a tough hurdle. So in that regard, if your district does not choose to move forward to take ownership of this facility, I will go back to Sac County. I will go meet with the supervisor and say, listen, this is not going to work. I'm going to try to get the condition changed to make that area private so we don't have this misalignment of interests between parties in perpetuity. I think that property is a jewel, and I think it should be open to everybody and everybody's enjoyment. But I think we need to align everybody's interests so that it works well for everybody. And I don't think what's on the table now. Sometimes, conditions of maps get written, and then you've got to figure out how to really make it work. And I am here at the point where I'm really trying to figure out how to make it work. And while I appreciate Larry's position 100%, I just don't think that's the best decision for all of your residents in perpetuity. So that's my spiel.
I can say my piece. I've been in this community and I've seen what goes on in this community, but I just don't think we're a big enough district to, if it's open to the public, the people go in there and something could happen to them, then they come back to us, a small district. Or like Larry was saying, if there's some species there, there's too many variables for us that can hurt us
I can
here.
clarify, the project's already gone through a complete EIR. It's already been certified.
I'm just afraid that something could come up and bite us. And then when it bites us, what do we do? If you have an option to go and do what you need to do to make it private, then things might be different. But right now, in my opinion,
there are options on when you would take ownership.
right.
We are going to grade the entire site because we're going to develop the entire site. So the site would be in a finished condition and then transfer ownership to the district. So there wouldn't be any issues of not being able to do something because of red-legged salamanders. That is just not a possibility because this project has been fully entitled and will be developed and graded prior to this district taking ownership of that property. So that's just not real. The risk is Yes, it's an insurable risk. Can a public district insure that? Absolutely. You're doing that now. Can that cost be included in the CFD so that the cost is covered? Yes, it can. So, I'm not sure what uninsured risk you're talking about, because that risk will be, I know because I've done it, tried to get this before, it's very difficult in the market for a private HOA to insure that publicly.
Sure should take, hang on a second.
Sure.
I just have something, for me, why do you state that the goal is to create, the wetlands and all this? What specifically?
That's your goal, not my goal.
Right.
You're right.
So what specifically would there be put in there?
That would be a discussion between the district.
So we would develop the whole thing from start to finish?
No, we are developing the site, but if you wanted to include a top lot, I'd be 100% supportive of that, because these residents that are gonna live there would love to have a top lot to take the kids over to, rather than getting in the car, if I'm driving to some other park, that could be a facility that could benefit the district residents.
So maybe I misunderstood that at the get-go, because I thought when we had that map up there, we had asked about that thing, I think Alan did, and he had said there had been something there, that there was previous.
I think-
I'm just trying to
I think what
recollect my mind.
Okay, actually, see what he was recollecting, but he was recollecting prior discussions with the prior developer,
Right.
and there was nothing required
In the map, there's
the
no
map.
park area.
There was no
But
park.
when Alan Hirsch came to this board,
Right.
he said there was gonna be a park in the map. And we never saw the map, because everything got put on hold, but apparently the map went forward, and I was unaware of that.
Well, I think the map was originally approved prior to Alan Hirsch's group owning property.
Well,
It was
before
done
Alan
by
Hirsch
Hirsch,
owned it, it was the federal government golf course.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, okay, but anyway, there is the potential to put park facilities in there. We just need to work through that with you guys and with the county and get them to agree. I've got a contract on my desk ready to go forward, but I wanted to get, hopefully this decision made, that we would have Cardinal Associates, you may know their environmental firm, to put together an open space management plan. And my hope was that we would do that jointly with the district staff, so it could all be put together so that it would suit your maintenance needs and your goals of what facilities would be best put in that area. Is there certainly room for a dog park or a parking lot?
So if I could just make a comment, and I think it's something that we sometimes I think we throw around terms like HOAs and CFDs, and I think we need to kind of go back and remember what these are. An HOA can be formed, and the rate that the homeowner pays can be changed at any time if the homeowners decide and vote to support improvements as they go on. So keep in mind, that's a fluctuating fee. A CFD is not a fluctuating fee, it's a set fee. Once that CFD is set, it can be adjusted. It's usually, just like the one we have right now, an annual cost of living adjustment. Very much, it could be 2%, 1%, could be nothing. So one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I've had this discussion with others who are familiar with this, is, and this was actually shared with us, I think, by the county when they talked about the failure rate of HOAs. So, and those usually happen down the road. They don't happen right away, they happen down the road. So if an HOA is put into place, and again, I'm not an expert in HOAs, but I've tried to educate myself a little bit on this. If an HOA is formed, and I'll make up a number, they charge themselves let's call it $500 a year for maintenance of the open space. 10 years down the road, that fee is now $800. 15 years down the road is $1,000. Well, when we do the CFD, remember the CFD is in place as a backup to the HOA. In the event the HOA fails, it's in place to say HOA has gone away, we need another funding mechanism in place to now continue the maintenance of that open space, which we own. Well, if your HOA is in place and again, your HOA has to reflect the improvements that you're making in that facility. But once those improvements are made, it's not new improvements down the road. You can replace equipment, as we can at Cherry Blossom Park, but we can't come and add more new features to it because we can't adjust that rate. So if we, for just argument's sake, if the HOA rate is $1,000 a month, or say it starts at 500 and the CFD starts at 500. 10 years down the road, the CFD is going to be adjusted by that cost of living adjustment. The HOA, we have no idea what that's going to be because we're not the homeowners who are voting to make improvements to that area. They might want a higher standard of maintenance. They want more playgrounds. They might want clatter bridges across the creek. I don't know what they want. But what happens is with a small district like ours, I have to be very careful when I make a recommendation to you that I don't put the district in a position in which we are going to be left holding the bag and we don't have the resources to cover it. So in the event 15 years down the road, the HOA fails, but now it's $1,000 a month. Well, now the CFD is only $600 with the annual cost of living adjustment. It went from 500 to 6. Now I got a gap of $400 per home. And now that's the standard that it is for the maintenance, and that's the standard it is for the improvements. Does that mean that our general fund needs to make up the difference? I have no other mechanism. I can't. If a HOA failed, I can't go out and form. I can't form the HOA, and the CFD is set in place. I can't change that CFD. So that's my concern, and I've had discussions with people who are familiar with these types of arrangements, and the question was, be careful when you use a CFD as a backup funding mechanism, because over time, it's not going to stay current to what you don't know what the HOA, how that's going to adjust, because we don't control that. So that's my concern, is when I look at the district, I can't put the district in a position where we have to supplement the maintenance fees for that project with general fund dollars, of which we have very little of.
So my concern is that right now it is unknown if there is a species such as a fairy shrimp or a red-legged salamander. We don't know that yet. So if we were to take ownership of that piece of land and then it was discovered there was something there that was protected, we would own the conservation of that. So we'd be responsible for making sure that species was protected, and we don't know what that will cost. So then that might affect all of the residents, because that affects our funding, could come from our general fund, and so that could diminish the rest of the parks in our district, because we're taking care of whatever species could be in there. At this point, I don't think we're prepared as a district to do that.
I have to dispute what you said, because it's just not true. This is a fully entitled project, has an approved DIR. It's fully permitted. There's no more requirements to jump through any federal hurdles on any species. As soon as we get a grading permit, we can go grade that site and have a finished site. All the pads graded, all that open space graded.
And do you have a grading permit?
No, it's in plan review. It said all of our plans have been through one plan check. But there are no environmental requirements left. We have a certified environmental document under CEQA. And we're not required to get a wetlands permit because we're not impacting the wetlands.
From staff's perspective, while I agree with Larry saying that if those things are in place, they're in place. I've also known, it wasn't my project, but another project in which similar situation. And again, I'm not trying to reach out there and say, here's something that may not ever happen, but here's an example of it. But I think it's fair to put it out there. Yes, the facility will be graded. Yes, at some point in time, it will be handed over from the developer to the district. Anything that happens after that is on us. I'm more concerned, I have a lot of concerns, but I'm more concerned by the fact is that there is a condition of approval already in place by the county that already says, doesn't say who owns it, doesn't say who maintains it, but it says the condition for the developer to be able to develop property is that this must be available to the public. Now, Larry can certainly go back to the county and argue his case and try to get it changed because we decided not to take ownership and maintenance of it. But remember, the conditions of approval, there was a condition there that simply said, we just had to form a CFD, an HOA, or I think it was landscape and lighting district. We just basically had to pick one. Well, we picked one. But it didn't say anything that, well, the district, you need to own the property to make all these things happen. It said that as a condition for the developer is that it has to be open to the public. Now, if Larry goes back and argues his point and he's successful in doing that, well, then what he said could happen, yeah, we could have some divided community somewhere down the road. But also keep in mind, the county could come back and say, no, that condition's not going to change.
My argument is it's divided if it's open to the public and under homeowner association control.
Right, I understand. I understand, what I'm trying to say is that as it's, I can only deal with the present, I can only deal with what we know and what is fact. What we know is there's conditions of approval. We know that we have met our conditions of approval, and that one of the conditions of the developer, not the district, is to make sure that that facility is open to the public. That's, it's not our fight.
But Larry, your goal of your district that you're supposed to include in your report is that your board's goal is that this open space preserve become part of the park district system.
Well, Larry, and I don't want to be argumentative, but it doesn't mean that just because it's in a master plan, it's a master plan, it's a guide. It's something that is to guide the district, but it doesn't mean that every opportunity that we have to acquire open space, that we have to do it. It's, you can
mention it in your report.
But my point is this. It already, that works, your argument is successful, except for the fact is the county says you're already responsible for keeping it open to the public. And I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but you can't burden our district by saying, well, somewhere down the road, these people may not like the idea that you're coming here using it. Well, we're also maintaining off-site recreation improvements, which is a requirement that are going to benefit those people. So I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, this issue is not our issue. And just because we have a master plan that says a lot of things in it, doesn't mean we're obligated to take on every chance that somebody wants to give us something that we have to take it, because when we take it, we take some risk with that as well. And my recommendation to the board is that I can't recommend to you to place the district now or somewhere in the future to take that particular risk.
I don't think it's a burden, I think it's an opportunity.
So I'm the only one that hasn't chatted, so, a couple things. First of all, to me, there's two major items. One is the risk, which has already been mentioned. You're gonna have ponds or something, you have a toddler fall in and drown. Yeah, that's on the district then. Then the other thing is the maintenance aspect of this. It's not mowing lawns, it's natural, and we don't usually deal with this. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, yeah, this will be open to the public. I don't think there's gonna be busloads of people showing up to walk around from the public. I think it's gonna be very, very limited of those outside the development that go there. I mean, I've been in this community a long time, not as long as some other fellow board members, but I just don't see that it's gonna be that big of an issue that they're even gonna notice that people outside their development are gonna be using it.
Any more discussion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to go with staff's recommendation.
I'll second that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you for your consideration.
All right.
Yes, she does.
You did a great job.
Item 10C, calendar year 2019 investment policy for the pool investment fund. So we have board action to receive and file this annual report. So, Alan, did you want to highlight the investment
But if
report?
anybody's interested, tomorrow at 9 o'clock is the Treasury Oversight Committee meeting in room 1, so.
Larry on it.
This is just a receipt file.
Yeah. So we just need board action that we're, do we have to take a vote to accept?
I make a motion to receive and file this annual report.
Yeah, motion, do I have a
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. District accepts the 2019 policy. Okay, so resolution number.
Hold on, we have to have someone leave the room.
Okay, I was just gonna say what it was.
Okay.
Okay, resolution 569, so we had to have board member Zach recuse himself from that item. So, board action and discussion to consider approval to amend the 2017-18 fiscal year Cherry Blossom final budget. So, Larry, did you want to add anything?
No, I just wanted to just point out that, when you do something new for the first time, you always hope that, when you change jobs, you hope that the first time your paycheck shows up, it actually shows up, right? Well, we were certainly having, after all the time spending, maturing of Blossom Park, getting everything ready to go and having to jump through a lot of hoops with the county, we were really happy to find out that we actually had funds in the account, that once we accept the park in April, that we have certainly the ability to maintain for the remainder of the fiscal year while we develop a full year's budget on full year's special taxes in anticipation for the following year.
All right, I'm trying to find my copy of it. Thank you. So, does anyone have any questions of Larry on that? So, do we have?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve resolution 569 to amend the Cherry Blossom Park budget for 2018-2019.
Second that motion?
Yeah, a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. I know, I need it on my paper. Oh, here it is. Whatever.
Some guys, they got your line on the line, the other guys, they go a little quicker.
Sorry for someone.
All right, item 11, payment of bills. So, any of my fellow board members have any questions?
What's that one?
Oh, well, yeah, maybe it's French or something.
Yeah,
What's a crabby? Crab feed or crabby?
that's what I said.
I gotta be somewhere else than looking.
So when did we return to HD Supply for $500?
There was some lighting that did fit the needs. that we,
No, we stopped at these?
No. We did get credit till we spent up to the 500.
Right, of course. Yeah, I didn't see anything except, crate.
When did we start offering Taekwondo?
We did at the very beginning of the year. We had last year. It was a big program last year, and we had low enrollment, so we.
Oh, I knew about the Tai Chi, didn't know like Taekwondo as well.
Same as well, yeah.
Gotcha.
They were only averaging like one student.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Robinson.
So who made a phone call to Dick in December?
Well, I'm sure I did.
That was probably one phone call, so.
$75.
$72.50.
I just leave it. I'm trying to remember what that was, but it was probably just,
Merry
yeah.
Christmas.
Well, at least they rounded off to the quarter hour, right?
We'll make a motion of last time payment of bills.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. The next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will be on March 14, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the North Highlands Recreation Center, 1640 Watt Avenue, North Highlands. But we're having the community center dedication right before the board meeting that starts at 5 o'clock. Next start over at the community center. So we'd like to encourage my fellow board members.
Is there gonna be refreshments?
Yes.
And we have, here, as you know, the sign is,
I've
here.
heard.
We have the plaque is here. We want to put those, install those at the last minute.
Right.
Scott has assured me that the landscaping will be held in rain, shine, or snow. It will be that.
But that doesn't have monsoons like we had.
They cover the whole lawn, so.
Don't go back on your word now.
We're really excited about next month and the cadence as well. And, we're looking forward to. And I think it's good. The facility's gonna look nice. We just hope that the rain gives us a little bit of break.
Me too. It's raining out there.